I think we've covered this page well. So let me move some of this out of the way and we'll move on to page number 2. Bullets 102. Yay! Let me make sure this is straight in here. I call this extras, and it really could be also be called miscellaneous points. Canalure. Canalure is this ring around the bullet. Here's another one. And yet here's another one. But if you notice, there is no canalure on these bullets. Okay? Not all bullets have canalures. Some do, some don't. The canalure is to indicate where the bullet is to be seated in the brass. Okay? If you look, see if I can get this thing to focus and see if you can see it. Right where the case meets the bullet, you can see the canalure on the bullet, okay? And that does two things. It gives you a seating depth for that bullet, and it also allows you to crimp the case into that canalure to hold the bullet securely, and it also increases the pressure when inside the bullet when it is fired. Okay, and remember those points. Typically, if you have a bullet with a canalure, you want to seat it so the brass is right in the middle of that canalure. Okay, and with when you do so in these, the canalure is put on there by the manufacturers to make sure that this actual, when you have the bullet seated to the proper height, you will be less than the maximum overall length of the cartridge. Try it and see. You'll find out it's true. Okay? Now, some people will say that a canalured bullet is not as accurate as a non-canalured bullet. Well, if you're shooting 1,000 yards and you're shooting competition and match, I'll agree with that statement. But for general purposes of hunting, punching holes in paper, and or social work, bull hockey. Especially in high pressure, high recoil rounds, I'll take a canalured bullet every day of the week because it just works better for me, and I have a higher confidence level in it. And that's just my humble opinion, and there you go. You didn't ask for it, but you got it anyway. Okay? Now, let's talk about boat tail versus non-boat tail. What we have here, this is an SS-109 bullet that they use in the M855 rounds, the military 5.56 rounds for the AR platform. It has a steel cone here in the tip. It's a penetrator. It's not armor piercing, it's a penetrator. There's a difference. This is a boat tail. If you look here at the base, you get back up here so you can see it. See if this thing will focus. You see how it goes in down at the bottom? It's done for aerodynamic reasons. It just think of it as a spoiler on a NASCAR car. It just allows the bullet to fly through the air with less interference, and it also helps when you're seating the bullets and putting the bullets in the cases to be seated. Okay, that's a side benefit. That's not the main reason. The main reason is to increase the efficiency of the bullet flying through the air. This is a flat base bullet. If you look, this thing will focus. You can see that base is perfectly flat. There is no indentation on here. This bullet is, generally speaking, less accurate than an equivalent bullet with a boat tail. But for hunting purposes and for social purposes and for punching holes in paper, this is perfectly fine. Okay. Bonded. Bonded really comes into play with hollow point ammo and soft point ammo, and it's a process where the manufacturers, when they're putting the lead inside the jacket, where the lead and the jacket are bonded together to keep them from separating. Okay, and that's what bonded is. It's a process that they use to attach the lead to the copper jacket so that they don't separate once they encounter the whatever you're shooting at, whether it be the elk, the bear, the zebra, the rhino, the elephant, whatever. Okay, it keeps the jacket from separating from the core of the bullet. Typically they're a little bit more expensive than the non-bonded bullets, and depending, a lot of places where a lot of people want, you know, all the penetration they can get with as much of the bullet as they can get, so they like to buy and use bonded bullets. Are they worth the price? Depending on what you're going after. If you're going after a big old bear, hey, I want every bit of advantage I can get my hands on, you'd bet I would be buying bonded bullets to shoot bear with. So something relatively new that I ran into that I never had experienced before is a concave base. If you look at this round nose bullet, this is a Berry's bullet. It's a 115 grain round nose plated bullet for 9mm. It's 0.355 inch diameter. Okay, here is a 124 grain bullet, also from Berry's, also a 9mm, 0.355 diameter. But if you look at the base, it looks like a hollow point, and it's actually a concave base. And what that does, it's kind of like back in the Civil War when they adopted the mini ball. It allows the gas pressures to take and build up and push the bullet out into the lands of your rifling, and it gives you more contact area, more gas seal around it, and a little bit more velocity out of the bullet. It also allows the bullet, because it's grabbing the lands and the grooves in your barrel better, gives you a little bit more spin and a little bit balances, and it gives you a little bit better gyroscopic effect of the bullet once it comes out, a little bit better accuracy. And I really like them. It allows me, the bullets are a little bit longer too because of that. If this had been a flat point, it would be a little bit shorter, but because it's longer and bigger area, and because of the hollow base, I can still seat it like the flat point, the same height, and not have an overpressure issue because it's a longer bullet, because of that hollow base. You always want to be careful about loading your bullets too short, because it causes an increase in pressure in the cartridge when you fire it. Same thing, the opposite is true too. If you don't seat it in deep enough, you don't get enough pressure in the shell when you do fire it, and you get misfires and unburnt powder and low velocities and all kinds of problems. And I had a buddy that had a problem with his 45s that he was loading up because he was saying, God, this stuff is dirty, it's dirty, dirty, and the powder is not necessarily known for being overly dirty. So I asked him what the particulars were, primers, and what weight bullets he was using, and how, what his overall cartridge length was. When he told me what the overall cartridge length was, I knew what his problem was. He wasn't seeing the bullet deep enough. And as soon as he changed it, I think he only changed it like 3 thousandths, maybe 4 thousandths of an inch, all of a sudden a very mild-mannered, limp wrist load became a very powerful rock and roll, you betcha, clean burning load. And sometimes, a couple thousandths of an inch makes a big difference on your seating depth. always follow your recipes as they're printed. They're there with the overall cartridge length and everything else, seating, which gives you your seating depth for a reason. Realize that if you seat it too deep, you're going to run the possibility of having an overpressure problem, flattened primers, kabooms, on and on. If you don't seat them deep enough, dirty, unreliable, slow. Always follow your recipes. Okay? Penetrator. Back here to this. There's a difference between a penetrator and armor piercing. The penetrator here, this SS-109 bullet for the M855 5.56 millimeter military load, has a steel cone here underneath the copper jacket. Okay, this is a full metal jacket. And then it's got a lead core base here at the back. The Army came up with this design to penetrate Eastern Bloc soft armor back in the day. In other words, they built it to penetrate flak jackets and stuff like that, which this will do, hands down. It is not an armor-piercing round, contrary to popular belief. The steel isn't heavy enough and will deform when it hits armor and will not penetrate it. Armor-piercing rounds typically have, instead of a steel, have a tungsten cone inside and different things to allow it to penetrate armor. Armor is a whole different ballgame than soft or even plate protectors for soldiers. Okay, so a penetrator is not armor piercing. Please don't use the terms interchangeable, because it just gives all the anti-gun idiots another knife to throw at the target. There is a difference. Okay. Tracers. Tracers use a chemical compound inside the base of the bullet that allow it, and when you fire the round, the chemicals actually ignite and will visibly leave a burning trail behind the bullet, which allows you to trace where the bullet goes. The tracers are typically military or military surplus, and I personally have no use for them typically. I don't have a machine gun. I don't need to see where the rounds are going. I point and I shoot and I aim, whereas with a machine gun you don't necessarily always do that, and you're watching where the bullets are going. So typically they'll have a tracer round every 5 rounds. There'll be a tracer round so you can see where your rounds are going. Okay. You need to be very careful if you're using tracer ammunition in your guns, because they will and can potentially cause some fire damage if you're out in the desert or out in the woods shooting tracer ammunition. Gas checks. Gas checks are used. They're a steel or a brass or copper plate that is attached to the bottom of a cast bullet, and they do that to help keep the lead from building up in the barrels of guns that you're shooting cast bullets out of. It also allows you to shoot them a little bit faster. Generally speaking, cast bullets you want to shoot less than 1,200 feet per second. I personally won't shoot them over 1,100, and probably more times than not it's usually less than 1,000 feet per second when I'm shooting lead. Also, on the subject of lead bullets, if you have a polygonal type rifling in your barrel, you don't want to shoot lead bullets, because the lead will build up and plug up your polygonal rifling, and you could cause, and it has historically caused, the barrels to fail. And those barrels are typically in what is referred to as a Glock. So if you have a Glock, don't be shooting cast lead bullets in it. Just saying. Full metal jacket versus total metal jacket. This gets interesting because it's kind of a play on words, but it's not. Okay? What we have here this is a full metal jacket. This is a 55 grain 224 diameter. So Hornady for the AR platform. This is a full metal jacket. But if you look at the base, what you see there is the lead. Okay, the lead core in the bullet. There is no copper over it. This is a full metal jacket. If you look at this is a plated bullet. This is also could be referred to as a total metal jacket because there is no exposed lead. A lot of indoor ranges are now requiring you to shoot TMJ bullets instead of FMJ bullets because FMJ is not necessarily a TMJ. Okay? Now, in this soft point, the only exposed lead is here on the tip. Same thing with these hollow points. But even the MA55, if you look, there's the exposed lead. Indoor ranges are becoming more and more concerned about exposure to lead and lead vapors as you shoot the weapon. So they're requiring you to have green ammunition or TMJ bullets, and that's simply to protect you and everybody in there from exposure to lead vapors. And I've already kind of talked about the sealing depth with the cantilures. I think that's it. Now on to